The Adirondacks are arguably the most impressive park in the world. Living here every day, it can be easy, even for me, to lose perspective on what that means. But we are the beneficiaries of an incredible gift from generations of New Yorkers who have preserved public lands and generations of private landowners who value this place. Even by those high standards, Raquette Lake is a special place. The lake itself, the town, and the community. What's proposed here, as I understand it, is a for-profit industrial facility owned and operated from afar by a large power company. While backup power is listed as the initial purpose of this facility, I cannot understand how Rev Renewables and LS Power can justify their investment and participation in this project, especially given the resistance that you're going to face and the reputation that you have elsewhere that by your account is good. I don't understand how you're going to make enough profit to justify this without using this as a facility that day to day will primarily buy power when it's cheap and sell it back at higher prices. The reason the public is being asked to subsidize these kinds of business opportunities is to decarbonize our economy in order to protect places like Raquette Lake, not to degrade them. Local communities, unique environments, and local ratepayers should not bear further burden in providing the opportunity to private enterprise.
Yes.
Furthermore, the siting of this industrial facility within the Adirondacks, as any, should be done with the greatest of care. Despite the maps that you looked at, I simply cannot understand, other than the proximity to the Raquette substation, how this site, which is basically in town on elevated land above one of the most beautiful and undeveloped large lakes in the Adirondacks, is inappropriate, let alone the best site for this facility. Finally, I respectfully request that Rev Renewables make available to us the winning bid to National Grid and their internal economic analysis. And if I could just say one thing more to everyone here. I know that we have very strong feelings and passions about this issue, but we are concerned about more than the lake. We're concerned about this community and the people in it. So I would appreciate it if we can all do our best to be civil with one another and to end personal attacks, particularly in times of trouble for the families involved.
We live here, we have to deal with it, and we love Raquette Lake. Thank you.
Clarification on the contract. I understand it's for 7 years, and then today I heard 20. What does the contract look like, and what does the sunset of that look like? So if it is 7 years, what happens at the end of 7 years? Are the batteries removed? What is the plan for that?
The initial contract is for 7 years. Both parties have expressed interest in extending it. Obviously, it's will be a negotiation, so can't get into too much of it here. But yeah.
So is the 7 years starting now as part of this process, or does it start in 25 when the system would start up?
Yes, it starts when the facility becomes operational.
Okay, so what happens at the sunset of that 7 years? Would batteries be removed, or the facility?
That's what he just explained. We're intend, because the life of a facility like this is 20 plus years, that we would negotiate an extension. We're obligated under the existing contract that you're asking about to negotiate terms of extending it. We plan to do that, and we have no reason to believe we wouldn't do it. To your point, if for some reason it wasn't extended and you needed to remove the batteries, there was a decommissioning plan. We would shut the facility down and the batteries would be removed. That's the way the plan is set up.
Thank you.
Then there's site reclamation? Sorry.
Yes, site reclamation.
All the equipment would be removed.
And you plant trees, maybe,
Maybe. I mean, we could talk about that.
if the bond is good enough. Sorry, Rhonda.
In terms of the number of people that would be impacted if there were an event that we could not get past where the site is. I run facilities, we have over 100 people there. There's another facility that's located nearby, depending on the time of year. There's another few hundred people there. In terms of thinking about the ingress and egress of an emergency situation, that's very concerning to me. And so thinking about how folks would get out, thinking about it's lake access only. And so I want to make sure that that's really part of all of these plans, and that is really understood, the number of people that is impacting and what those emergency plans would be. would there be public input on those plans?
In terms of the emergency response plan, if the, like closing roads and things of that nature, I would expect there would be.
There's one road is my point, so what do we do with the one road?
Is there a need for
If
evacuation?
this is in regards to emergency response, that is all up to the incident commander. The number one priority is the safety of the members that are actually operating at the scene.
My
And
question
even
is,
if it's a structured fire, even if it's a structured fire, they're gonna do the exact same thing. They're gonna make sure it's safe.
but what's the plan from Rev? Is that part of, so whoever's going to be running and operating this, there needs to be a plan in place. That plan needs to include, how are we getting out of this area with only
Based-
one road in that is potentially blocked?
Yeah, based on the design that we have in the fire protection systems, there should never be a situation where the road is blocked.
Well, I understand that, you need to understand that it's a major concern of many of the folks that are here.
There is a code that states that you have to have more than one egress for
Yes.
buildings, correct? Depending on the number of people that are in it. That's what she's asking. So depending on the number of people that you're trapping, you need to be able to have egress within a certain amount of time. Is that correct? This
I'm
is
not a
for the
code
guy
expert
writing the
on
NFPA.
traffic patterns.
This is for the guy writing the NFPA, is that true?
There is, the only thing that is in the NFPA is fire department access.
Okay.
That's
What
all
about
that
the
is there.
people that are, what about the people that are trapped in this building? How many access do you have to have?
That is not, it's not covered in the NFPA. It's
But it is covered in the code.
fire department access to the facility is.
That's not
covered
what
in
she's
the code.
asking you.
Fire
You're
department
avoiding the situation. Answer the question, please. You have so many people on one road. What is the egress? How are you going to evacuate these people if you have to shut that road down? I'm sure you
Sir,
understand that
I'm only
question.
gonna tell you what I know, and that is,
Or you can find
You
out,
can just
correct?
say you don't know,
You can say you don't know.
and you have no plan.
Right.
I-
That's
what
the
I-
young lady's question.
I'm gonna tell you what the fire code covers. The fire code covers fire department.
That's your
access
department.
roads.
That's not what
That's what
she's
it covers.
asking. So if you don't have somebody on your panel that can answer that question, then the answer is you don't know.
I don't know that, it's outside
There
the
you
fire
go,
code.
that's what you wanted to know.
It's outside the fire code.
Thank you.
But the follow-up to that is, will we, the people here, have a say in what that plan is? Will we be able to say that that would work, that would not
be
work?
part of the permitting process. Our emergency response plan is part of the permitting.
That was my, okay, that's my question.
My question concerns, what would prevent this project from even continuing? Is it already too far into your motions? We don't have any permits yet.
I mean, we don't get a permit from the town of Long Lake, we will not build it.
I want to point out that part of the permitting process is to ensure questions like these and concerns that you have are addressed through that process.
You're not gonna get your permit.
That's what the process is for.
Well, we've discussed by numerous speakers that Raquette Lake is pristine. Should there be a situation at the facility, meaning a fire with ash, and I don't understand where the water would come from to help put the fire out to begin with, and that's probably a fire department question, but what's the impact on the lake? We have loons, ospreys, Canadian geese, they're protected. We have a native strain of lake trout that the New York State DEC takes the eggs from every single year. What's going to happen to them? We already have lost our whitefish. People drink out of the lake. Kids swim in the lake. We'll send you some water if you have a fire. Are there situations where the battery farm would not provide backup power? For example, if a tree fell on a line between Raquette Lake and Inlet, Raquette Lake would still have power, but the rest would be without?
So the way that system's gonna work is where that section is, where the power's out, we're gonna isolate on both sides of it. So the battery's gonna feed Raquette Lake, And then Boomville's gonna keep continuing up to Eagle Bay substation, which is inland.
Okay, I guess I didn't write the question. Say the power's out in Alder Creek, so the line's out,
Yeah,
but now the power's going back from this facility. But
right.
now a tree fell on the line.
A second event?
Most of the events are between Raquette Lake and Inlet.
Right.
Every tree falls on
Yes.
that line. So the power's already out in Alder Creek all the way up.
No.
Yeah, because they already had a situation there.
No.
Somebody crashed their car in White Lake, hit the pole, knocked out all the power.
Yep.
Now the battery's gonna kick in to go back.
So if there's a fault during the microgrid mode of this operation, what this would do is then sectionalize that next section to keep most customers in that are closest to the battery that are then upstream from that fault. So say if there's one between, say we lose something at Alder Creek, and then we lose something between Inlet and Raquette Lake. Raquette Lake will still be in service.
Well, we already all have generators, so we're already good. Or we have candles.
Owner in this town, and probably why I got more involved is if something happens, it's only going to happen once here, and you're looking at the only paramedic, and my son and I are the only SCBA certified people. So, and I don't live here full time. I wish I did. But that being said, one question that's been alluded everywhere in town, social media and all that. Don't worry about that. Power comes down. Is it going north? Golden Beach? This would be the National Grid to Casey.
I didn't hear the first part.
Power's coming down. Is it going? It's going to go to Inlet. Is it going to go north to Golden Beach?
So the National Grid's power stops at Raquette Lake. Our stations go
All the way up to Golden Beach and beyond. We hear in two stories, so that's why I'm asking the question. We hear that it's going to come down to this corner and go to Inlet. My business is that way, and so is the firehouse, and so is Birch Marina, and Birch Marina. And
Yeah, so you are on our distribution system that's fed from here.
that is correct.
Right, so, yeah, you will be powered by the Raquette Lake Station because your feeder is fed from the Raquette Lake Station. 'Cause you're-
That hasn't been clarified, so that's why I did that.
Does that help? Is that
Yeah.
clear now? Okay.
Yeah. I would look at I wouldn't dig your ditch for your wire and only put it 3 feet down. It should be 4 feet down. We got a lot of frost up here.
We'll work with the town to put it at whatever depth we need to put it at, so.
Your study, National Grid, showed that you would have better results fixing things once the lines are down. Why would the crews respond faster and do a better job while the battery's working up here?
So they would be working on de-energized lines as opposed to live lines if it was planned maintenance. That was the example of planned maintenance where we would be able to energize the battery and keep the stations we normally need to take out to do the work. So that we'd be able to keep customers in power while we de-energize the line for the safety of our workers.
Okay, and it's good. I agree with you. So that's not an emergency in regards to us, why you want to give us the battery in case we're out of power for a tree on the line. That's for safety of the crews, which we want to make sure they're safe. I agree. But your study made it look like the crews will work faster because of the battery system. Your picture.
I can help answer that too. So with the new upgrades that are going to be coming on too, so if we do have say we have a line or a tree comes down on the line between two stations, that's going to be de-energized fully. We're going to also know exactly where that is because we know it's between the two stations so that we can get a crew out there and they know, hey, we have to hit this spot in order to actually get the crew out here to actually get the rest of the line up in service quicker. Doing that, it's also de-energized, so there's less work.
Well, your crew's going to come up the same speed they come up now, so.
I think to clarify, I think you're asking the question is how how your outage is reduced in time, right? So the crews aren't working faster, but the battery's providing power. While the crews are still using the same amount of time to make the work or make the repairs, the battery is just providing power in the time that the crews are doing the work. So now the outage to you guys is reduced because the batteries.
That's a different slide, but you're right there.
Yep.
But the one slide that talked about
If it's planned work, so if we
Yeah.
want to replace some insulators or something, we'll have an opportunity to sectionalize, do that work, de-energize, and keep everybody downstream of the work area energized.
Smart move. And I'm sorry, I had one more. Oh, you said if the you had check boxes saying if we brought new power lines up Eagle Bay, that wouldn't benefit Raquette Lake. Why not? I know you're saying we may have a tree on the line. I understand that.
Well, so the problem is, most of those interruptions are between Eagle Bay and here. So if we bring a line down and it terminates at Eagle Bay, you guys are still hanging out at the end of a 60-mile line or a
No,
30-mile
we're
line.
hanging. That's a 10-mile line. Eagle Bay is only 10 miles away.
I understand that, but it's being fed from somewhere, right? You've got 10 miles of exposure that another feed in Eagle Bay doesn't do any good for you. And most of the outages that you saw are between Raquette Lake and Eagle Bay, right?
No.
You can share the information.
All right, one quick, Paul, nice job, brother. You don't think you ever see a runaway in the battery system?
Do I think I'll ever see a thermal runaway?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, oh yeah, you'll see it.
So why?
So, again, if you, and you're talking about the energy storage systems, right? Yeah, so, the batteries, have tremendous amount of redundancy to make sure that doesn't happen. But, I've seen many data points and data, right, that I'm basing this answer on if you were to have a cell to go into thermal runaway, it will not propagate. And even as I said, that 9540A, and I want you to do your homework on that. Good. So 9548, look at that, right? It is there to actually stop any type of spread in the rare event that maybe there was a thermal runaway event inside a cell itself. Yeah, the whole concept of 9540A was to keep it in the box, sort of like an oven, right? We turn our ovens on, right? And we keep everything, we got tremendous amount of heat in the oven, but we can walk right up to it. That was the concept behind what they were trying to establish UL with 9540A, right? So any heat that may be generated stays within the box, and we keep that thing isolated, and it doesn't propagate any further. I'm trying to give you a normalize. Thank you.
First part is directed right to National Grid. You said you did an analysis to come up with this idea for these folks here, and I'm just curious as to which customers you surveyed or polled or questioned or got any input from, and if National Grid would be willing to supply copies of any of their internal reports reference to the studies they've done.
Yeah, so I did come out to this building, Raquette Lake, in April of 2019 and Lake Pleasant in March of 2019 to talk mostly about our traditional solutions, the work we were going to do on the sub-transmission line. And at that point I did mention that we would look at future solutions, including battery storage, as a potential option to do a step change in the reliability in the area.
And there was overwhelming response from the community like there is tonight for this?
No, it was much more.
Okay, that's kind of the question I got. The other thing is just a comment. When I reviewed the documents from the Public Service Commission, it states the purpose for this is to do an experiment to see lessons learned from operating one of these facilities. There's nothing in the Public Service Commission's documents that are public record online that indicate that this is to provide backup battery power to Raquette Lake.
Are you talking about the energy storage order?
I'm talking about the Public Service Commission meetings that have published the minutes from those meetings and what's contained in those documents.
So, right, so there was a Public Service Commission order.
And National Grid indicated at that the purpose for this project was to gain lessons learned in the wholesale energy market from operating a battery energy storage system. There's absolutely nothing in that document that indicates that this is for Raquette Lake for a backup power supply. Just saying what's in the public document from the government.
I can speak to the RFP. So
it's not in the RFP.
No, but the RFP stemmed from the Public Service Commission order, which we said, clean energy is more broad, but let's use it for reliability. which is why we thought we identified
But
four
that's not what it
different-
says in the Public Service Commission document. I'm happy to give you a copy of the public record. That's all there is to it. Okay, monitoring. So I have a little different background than some other folks here. So one of the things I'm most concerned about, and nobody seems to have addressed it, is physical security of this. Recent events have had power lines shot or substations shot down in North Carolina, causing damage to the power facilities and infrastructure. It's a hot new topic amongst homegrown terrorists, and I'm not advocating that this is going to happen here in particular. However, you have picked a rather good spot to not get caught to do something like that. It's in a very, very remote area, one road in, one road out. By the way, the other road dirt road that did come in there, I was told a couple of weeks ago that washed out this year in the spring. So it is one road in, one road out. These people are 100% accurate with that. You do have several hundred people that you need to be concerned about should something go wrong, because they are trapped. Their only option is to go across the water and get out of here. And again, my background's in security, so I know for a fact that these things do occur. And somebody mentioned a hunting accident. That's been a common thing for years with hunters. It's come up and let's shoot something stupid and see what happens. It does happen. It happens in real life all the time. I see it. The only other thing I want to mention is we've talked about the environment some. And one of the biggest things that nobody has mentioned yet is Raquette Lake, parts of the forest around Raquette Lake are original growth forest. They've never been caught in all of these years. There's 4 or 5 areas that are close by, and they're close to where you're proposing to build this. If those catch fire and burn, it's a national treasure, let alone a state treasure, that's going to get lost. Don't think that we should be building something where you've proposed. I'm not opposed to green energy at all. I'm just not a big fan of the site that you've chosen whatsoever.
First, I want to commend you guys on your choice of clothing, because suits would have implied that you were making a profit off of our community, and you are, and don't deny it. You're doing this to make money, renewables. National Grid, okay, I know you're trying to provide power. This is not about backup power. This is about a for-profit company coming in here and putting a utility-grade power station on a ridge above our village. Okay, but I do have some questions. How many floodlights will there be in the facility?
I mean, we're working on a lighting plan that's gonna be in accordance with the town of Long Lake permits.
Okay, and how much light pollution will there be from those? How many lumens will each one of those lights have? How high will the fence be? Will there be razor wire on top of the fence? Will you see it from the town? Will I be able to see it from my dock? The answer to all of those things is yes, I will see it from my dock. Yes, you will ruin the stars that we all love. The Adirondacks are the only dark skies in this Northeast. How will this affect our property values?
Yeah.
It's not just about charging us 9 cents a month.
That's right.
You can't answer that question, so don't. Stop trying. You spoke about the importance of doing this well. You talked about Renewables' reputation. I'm here to tell you, we will destroy your reputation. This is not green energy. This is a for-profit operation. None of us are against green energy. We are all environmentalists. This is the wrong place to do this. I recommend you do not buy the second site and you walk away. You will not get your permits, even if it requires that we chain ourselves to the goddamn road. Once those trucks come up here, we will do it. We are starting a nonprofit. We are hiring lawyers. We will be at every permitting meeting going forward, and you will not get this facility in here. Period.
Most of my questions have been answered, but I understand why you guys are doing this. There's a need, but this is Raquette Lake, and it's not the right location. So you've done a lot of work, a lot of smart people, and there's a lot of outages. But this area, it can't, I'm gonna cry, it cannot be put here. That site, I don't know how many of you have walked up there, looked at it. It's on a ridge, it's big boulders, It's, you know, obviously forest. I can't imagine what it's gonna take to level it, and the amount of sand, fill that's gonna have to be carted in there. It's, the whole thing is just so ludicrous. We're just trying to, I wanna respect your job, you know, your purpose here. If it's truly to give battery backup, which is debatable. But it's just, the site is just not the right place. On the other side, so there's the hamlet, and then it's probably the highest point in the hamlet area. And then it goes down into the state forest and into this beautiful wetland. And on the other side of the wetland is, because your pictures are not showing, that there's a beautiful, huge, prehistoric wetland down there. God knows what's living down there. We don't even know. And it can't be affected. It cannot burn. It cannot have any chemical runoff. And I know it's a tiny, tiny chance. Well, I don't know what chance it is. It's a small chance. Even if it's a 1% chance, who would do that? Would you want your children a 1% chance that their bedroom's gonna burn down? This is our community. Generations of families have lived here. Where are they gonna go? There's a housing crisis in the Adirondacks. One house would be devastating to lose one house. And now on the other side of the wetlands is a girls' camp. So in the summer we got hundreds of sweet little girls from 6 years old up to, you know, teenagers, you know, the counselors. And we can't get out. I live back there. There's like, I don't know how many houses, 50 houses back there? More? And we will not be able to get out. That tiny chance there's a fire. We're trapped. And there's chemicals in the air, there's fire, there's old growth, forest, animals, and then the lighting, the migration of birds. When they see, whether it's like a store in a dark lit area, it could be a convenience store, it causes the birds to crash because they go towards the light. They use the stars to travel when they migrate in the spring and the fall, back and forth. And they use the stars to navigate. And when they see light down below them, they're just attracted to it. And so New York State has now banned lights from 11 p.m. till dawn in the spring and fall. Which is pretty amazing. This just happened last year. So we just have a lot of issues here. That site, I wish every single one of you would walk up there and just take a moment to sleep there under the stars. It's all good for us.
We have certainly walked all over.
But we're up here for.
We haven't slept there.
We're here for mental health reasons. We all, you know, obviously the lucky locals that live here year-round, but the rest of us, we get up here as much as we can for sanity, you know, the fresh air, the quiet, and just the energy that the mountains have up here, and the stars. It grounds us. It makes us realize how we fit into this universe, this whole picture. Like, we're not just about, you know, what we are back in the city and the suburbs. So we just don't want it. We understand there's a need, but we don't need it that bad. We don't need it that bad.
Pretty good presentation, I would say, although I think there's some things that are missing in here. Visual impacts was really, really weak. A lot of things discussed here tonight I was going to ask about, but they were presented to you without really a good response. I'm wondering about what kind of response you're going to get from these questions. Will it be something you're going to give back to this group, like we typically have in public meetings? Is this being taped? Is this being tracked? What's the town feel about that? That's question one. Question two.
You're saying that there were some questions that weren't answered, any specifics that you
I
want
think
us to
so.
dive into?
I think so. I think just having the question answered
along with the presentation should be presented, maybe put on the town website?
So, yeah, we do intend to post the slides. There is a frequently asked question handout, and then we do have contact information for follow-up questions as well on the handouts.
Okay, good. But the number one thing that I've got a question about is NYSEG feeds really just a point north of here, or it comes to the south point here, I understand. That's the connection with National Grid and NYSEG, correct? Okay. And I got it that Eagle Bay to Raquette is the problem area. I got that. It's a remote area. I don't know about the population here compared to the Old Forge area. In that area, it seems like it's way overpopulated there compared to here. So I question the $50 million benefit for what you're getting service out of. And I would further ask, could there be an arrangement under an emergency situation where the NYSEG electricity could continue to come south? Is that a possibility, or does it need some state legislation or utility legislation for that? And this whole thing can kind of go away with some upgrade to their system, some hardening to their system. Seems like a more appropriate, more natural solution.
Each utility is responsible for providing electric service to their customers. It's not practice to cross over the franchise rights for it.
So hold on. I think you're gonna answer this for us, right?
There's a nice switch down here and a nice switch over there. This was designed 20 years ago that you could disconnect going south to supply Raquette Lake with NYSEG.
As we have at all of our substations, right?
Yeah, what happened to that?
So you've got the generation at NYSEG. They've got 40 miles of wire as well that they're trying to pick up their customers. So, and you're right. If you want to, we can just serve Raquette Lake. We could make some arrangement. Listen to me. So you're the only ones that benefit from that.
Great. So how is power getting back from Newcomb to Raquette?
Nuka is
So at every
Newcomb.
Every single power outage I've had up at NYSEG has been National Grid's problem, not NYSEG. So every time that power goes out, I'm at the mercy of National Grid. That's what's going on here. It's a one single line from Boonville to Newcomb. Somebody trips over the extension cord. Thank you very much. I didn't come up with that one. But that's what happens. And so what you're trying to do is a Band-Aid for the smaller area. What about Long Lake? What about Indian Lake? What about Newcomb? What about all those areas up there? Why don't you spend $80 million or $100 million, whatever you spend, and bury that line from Boonville to freaking Newcomb? And we've all been over with this thing.
I have to tell you, I'm super happy to see you, because I've called Tom a few times, and he said, we'll have somebody there that can answer your questions. So one of my questions, you've met our only paramedic, right? I'm one of 3 EMTs that live here year-round. So my question was, who's going to release our fire department when there's an issue? Who's going to help our EMTs if there's an issue? I was told that we're going to find and train someone locally, but I'm not sure what that entails when we have 3 people here. Inlet has some more, Old Forge has some more. We don't, and within 40 miles, we don't have the capability to take care of a fire. And I know that this is supposed to burn itself out. We're just supposed to monitor it. But I'm talking about the fire that might happen to homes around, right? So we don't have the personnel within 40 miles for EMS or fire. Who's going to relieve us, and how are they going to get trained?
So I wasn't aware that there is only, did you say 1 or 2 people that are SCBA trained?
2. And you're not even year-round.
Yeah.
Yeah, we all have full-time jobs, and we're not all here all the time.
Yeah. So, and I deal with a lot of volunteer fire departments, right? Most of America is volunteer fire departments.
Sure, but they're probably bigger than Raquette Lake, right?
Yeah. And we did have a chief at the meeting from Inlet.
Yep, and you had my husband who was the chief in Raquette Lake.
Okay, and we had the chief, yes.
Yep.
Who was good, and I wasn't aware of the manpower issues or the staffing issues.
Really? Because I called Tom and I told him, and he told me that you'd be able to handle this question. So that's why I was happy to see you, happy to see you present, but I'm not getting the answers.
No, the answer that I would give you is that I will personally do the training. I've done training. I've actually put a course together for the NFPA training that has been done. So I can personally do that training.
And I appreciate that, but who are you going to train? We were told someone's supposed to relieve our fire department. I want to know about the response time. Are they coming from New York City? Are they coming from Buffalo, Syracuse? And who is it going to be? Because then the follow-up was it would be somebody local. Who are you going to find local?
Yeah, so we will have an O&M staff here, and we're working. Again, do we have anybody identified locally? No, not yet. But the plan will be to find somebody that we can hire that has a short response time that can get here if there is an incident, and there's a remote chance that there is, to relieve for fire watch. I mean, we will, as Paul said, we will rely on the fire department if there is an incident to show up. I mean, there will
So
be
as
training
one of
related
the
to that.
EMTs, and I'm married to the chief, so we'll both be responding. I'm going to request that that's in place before you build this.
Absolutely.
And I
The
think it's
emergency
gonna be
response plan
harder-
is part of our permitting.
I think it's going to be harder than you think it's going to be to find those personnel. Will there be any EMS training so that when we're responding to firefighters that happen to get inhalation or anything along those lines, or burns or anything, are we going to get any training for EMS? I mean, you said you're going to provide fire training.
Yeah, and we would only give training to the system that is in place. That's what I would do for them. I do not do EMS training. I don't do it. I'm
So,
an I'm
Rep,
an EMT.
will there be EMS training?
I've never heard of such a request.
Well, we also live 75 miles to the nearest hospital, so it is a concern.
Please don't take this as a director. I'm just curious what do you do now?
That's my point. That's my point. That's it. It's a struggle. And when inlet responds, it's probably a half hour. So if you call 911, it's a half hour for somebody to get there. I'm just putting out the reality to you, and I'm upset that you didn't know about any of this.
Well, we understand about the limitations of the local fire department, and we will work to ensure, again, if you look at what we're doing to design the facility, it's to ensure that those types of things don't ever happen, okay?
And I hope they don't, but it could happen. These other places that had fire, they said the same thing.
Good evening. I just have a few questions. I'm a former elected official for 15 years, and my questions are in two areas: site selection and transparency. The first question is, can this project be located on another site away from residential and community hub and away from the lakeside and still be effective? And I'm curious as to how the site was selected and what the process was.
Yeah, we did go through how it was selected, so Raquette Lake was the location first. And then if you look at avoiding wetlands and actual availability of public land, there's very little location that you could put a facility like this, that we essentially picked, in our view, the best location that we could here.
So was there a committee that looked at an aerial view of Raquette Lake and then you only identified one parcel?
Well, I mean, we identified, essentially, that was like the only parcel that worked. So yes, we talked to the particular property owners, whether they would entertain selling the property to us for this facility.
There were other property owners that turned you down.
That may be.
So the process was, there wasn't a formal process.
No, there's not a formal process by our company to pick a site. I mean, we're not a part of the public utility. We evaluated the land, we made our selection ourselves, and negotiated property rights deal with the current property owners.
Okay. So Clay, this question is probably for you about transparency. I'm a seasonal. I'm back and forth all year round. But the very first communication that I've received was the postcard the other day from National Grid. And I'm wondering if there was any opportunity for people like me who live on Antlers Road to come to any other public sessions, because I haven't been notified of any. And I know we talked shortly at the tap room, and I think you said there wasn't, but I just want to make sure that I'm not missing any other meetings or committees.
Thanks, Carla. No, you aren't.
In 2019 in Phoenix, Arizona, there was a thermal runaway, and my understanding is that it required 2.7 million gallons of water to quell it, and even then they had to bury it in order to get the fire out. So are you saying that your facility will be safer than that one because of our New York State fire code?
A great question, and I'm glad you did your research on that. You're talking about Chandler, Arizona, with an incident that took place there, and Surprise, Arizona, and I was involved in both of those. So those systems are dedicated use buildings, right, where they're not compartmentalized like we see here. That's Fire Protection 101, right? You try to compartmentalize things. And also, those systems were built to the codes that were not addressing the hazards at all. They didn't address the hazard at all. That was the impetus to make sure that when we were up discussing the original code, especially Surprise, that's when they started to listen to us at the table from the fire service, and we got a lot of traction. Unfortunately, 2 firefighters were hurt at that incident, but that now has all been taken care of as a result of what we put in place. And this is why I was so adamant that New York State adopt the code that's currently in place, because I wanted to make sure that the fire service was going to be kept safe. If they adopted the 2018 International Fire Code, I didn't think it went far enough for the fire service. They adopted the 2021 International Fire Code early. We had to go to the International Code Council, get permission from them to adopt that code early, because it came out in 2020, but the rest of the country did not adopt it till after it was put out, which was 2021. So yes, it is an entirely different code and standard as far as safety is concerned.
My other question is, how much is this project going to cost?
Yep, $50 million plus or minus 20%.
And how much would it cost to install a diesel generator that would serve as backup for Raquette Lake?
Well, if it's just for you guys, 2,000 kVA, maybe 2,500 for, electrification.
Something similar to what has been installed in Long Lake and Blue Mountain Lake by NYSEC in recent years.
I don't know, somewhere $3-4 million maybe.
Sold.
But again, the $50 million isn't just for you guys. It's for everybody back to White Lake.
I find it hard to understand how this is cost effective. And I also find it hard to understand how installing a diesel generator and operating it perhaps a half a dozen times a year for less than probably 20 hours is any more polluting than lithium mining for the lithium backup batteries that you're going to be installing up at Antlers.
And just, Jim, the estimate you gave would be a diesel generator just for Raquette Lake. It wouldn't solve the upstream issue for the other 60 miles of the line.
Will there be automated fire suppression systems within the containers? Like aerosol sprays and such?
There's no requirement to have them, and the system that you're getting right now does not. It doesn't need it. As a result of that testing, right, we have to take a look at that testing. As I said, the testing really does drive the safety, right? It really drives a lot of the product itself and going into the installation. And I try to explain it for people like the average person to understand. It is very technical, but it is, as I said, the linchpin of safety to show that propagation. And for those people that are looking up, they'll see thermal propagation. It's really spread. Thermal spread throughout the system has to be prevented.
Okay.
So,
I'll just note that that is the standard being applied to BESS systems being installed on Long Island for the wind power projects that are going on offshore. So in the event that there's a fault and the battery kicks on and starts sending power back down the the line, does the battery itself power its life safety systems, i.e. the BMS, the gas, monitoring detectors, anything like that? And if so, as the battery is being drained, how long can the battery sustain those life safety systems before or to prevent a thermal runaway?
As long as it needs to. I mean, it's designed to have the reserve capacity below what is used for powering the microgrid to ensure that it can operate as long as it needs to.
I mean, is that hours, days, weeks, months? Like, is there a time frame on that?
Krista, do you know
We haven't established the length of time. I mean, it would be designed sufficient.
No, Chris, I'll turn it up.
So the control house itself, the control system will have an 8-hour backup battery that's completely separate from the battery, the main battery system. As well, we'll have a reserve amount of energy inside of the battery container that's sufficient duration to power the life-saving devices until the test results would show, that they would be in order long enough to put out any issues.
Got it.
Yeah.
And just one last question. I looked at the codes, including NFPA 855 and the 2020 New York State Code. And I know there are a lot of thoughts about old growth forests and the forest canopy, but in those codes I did not reference any minimum distance requirement to the forest line or forest canopy as sort of a fire break in the event that there's an issue. Has that been considered for this project, given the adjoining state land?
yeah, and it is covered in there. They talk about,
Do you know the chapter and subchapter?
it says chapter, no, I don't know what chapter it's in, but there is a section 10 feet is what they said. We are, what do we say?
More than 10 feet.
We're way more than 10 feet. Yeah.
25 feet.
Yeah.
And
That's in
The
it.
New York State guide.
the site plan's been published, or a draft, a preliminary draft?
Tonight it was, sir.
The one that was on there wasn't to scale. I didn't see a scale bar.
Well, it will be, as part of our permitting process. We'll have it to scale, and it is more than 20 feet in most places, in some places 50. So that will be part of our permitting process, and it'll have a full scale on there. This was just tonight for presentation purposes.
Thank you.
Two questions. Will this project help people on North Point Road? What's that?
I believe so, because we get our same power.
All right. Now, are people on Raquette Shores, which are supplied by NYSEG? And I believe they get their power from North Point. Are they affected? Because there are no power lines from the south part of 28 to North Point, to Raquette Shores.
It comes around the top of the lake though, right?
No, we come under the lake to North Point, and then it goes down to Raquette Shores, and we get our supplies from National Grid. But there are customers at Raquette Shores that are supplied by NYSEG.
So the NYSEG customers would not benefit from this project. They have their own backup energy source in the event of a power loss.
But they get their supply from National Grid, from this line.
This is like the three houses in Big Moose that Nice Lake buys the power from National Grid, but because they're in a different county. They're in a different township at the, on Raquette Shores. So
Okay.
National Grid power,
So it sounds like they
Nice
would.
Lake sends to the mill.
So they would be supplied.
Yeah, so we do supply power across the lake in some areas. I don't know the specifics of all the residents in which houses are supplied exactly, but.
Okay. And I do have one further comment about the dark skies. There is a lot of light pollution. There are ways to mitigate light pollution by using shielded lights. Not that I hope this project goes, but you can't have shielded lights that focus the light down and not up.
Math, you're spending 50 million on 6,000 customers who lose X amount of hours over the course of a year, but you don't take into account the fact that they may be using backup generators? Hello? What financial sense does this make? I mean, you're spending it. I don't care if you go broke, but why? Why are you doing this? For 6,000 customers, and that's only along Route 28, correct? None of the side roads. And you don't take into account that most people who live up here understand that power outages are baked in the cake. That is part of life in the Adirondacks, and they're self-reliant enough and independent enough to provide for their own energy needs. So what's really going on? Maybe this is, and why on earth would you ravage the village of Raquette Lake with this stupid idea for 6,000 customers, again, who most likely are certainly well equipped to provide for their own energy needs? Can you answer that?
Here, right?
There was an RP run by National Grid to provide the battery. There were other companies, including, I don't know who else was on the list, but we were evaluated. We made a bid to them, and we were selected as the lowest cost alternative. It's part of the overall cost that they've identified to you. So.
Why did you make the bid? How much money are you going to make by destroying our town? 50 million? After tax rate, 80 million? We have friends in the business. We know how much money you're going to make. And we will destroy your reputation.
Okay, we're moving on.
I'm a third generation Raquette Laker, and I've spent all but 5 years of my life in the Adirondacks. Lived in Indian Lake, been through power outages. I sitting with the mittens in front of the stove, eating oatmeal before I left for school at 40 below zero. With a fire in the fireplace, we managed. We still manage. I have a generator, so I just go out, push the button, I'm good. The location is horrendous. Send it, put it toward inlet if they want it, that's fine. You know, I know there's a lot more places there. It's more commercial, there's more there. This is a quiet place where people just want to come, go out in a canoe, hear a loon, they don't want to hear a hum, they don't want the lights, and they certainly don't want to get stuck in the antlers if there is a fire. And I know you say that you're safe and all of that. As I recall as a kid, they were saying nuclear power plants were perfectly safe. But, you know, I've been with, it was in Niagara Mohawk, way back. And I appreciate what you guys do when the power goes out. When it goes out, and I'm going out to start the generator, I sit there and I say, oh, those poor guys. It's a Sunday night, 2 o'clock in the morning. Some fool took down a pole.
Lots of them.
Out between Woodgate and Otter Lake. You know, they like those poles. They're really good at getting those.
Well, otherwise, between us, we're trees. Most of the time, there's those big pine trees. And now, I'm down the road here, so is my power NICEAG? Does it come from NICEAG?
You write a check to National Grid, right?
Yes.
Yeah, it's coming from us out of here going that way on the distribution feeder, lower voltage stuff.
I think of National Grid. Every time there's a storm, I feel sorry for your linemen. I really do.
Has short-term advantages in the balancing of power grid. But the promotion of this project as a big advantage of backup power for our community is not the real focus of the project. Others have said that. I'm certain the amount of time of the outages are well documented by National Grid, and I believe have been very overblown to publicly rationalize this project. I talked to some representative at National Grid, and I said they ought to have that information. We're represented as being complainers. I've never complained about the power being out here in my life.
That's right.
I have a wood stove in the kitchen that we can cook on that was put in there in 1916. I heat primarily with wood, but I do have a fuel-oil furnace. I'm outraged that the state is saying we can't have diesel power. They want to get rid of gas stoves, what all that stuff. But get back to this, the longest outage in my lifetime that I can remember was in the 1990s blowdown storm, and it lasted a couple of days.
That's right.
This was the result of widespread storm damage in the Adirondack Park, and I doubt very much this installation would have made any difference. National Grid and Niagara Mohawk before them have always done an outstanding job in restoring power from storm or accident damages. They have done a lot of worthwhile maintenance work, cutting trees from the right-of-way and raising the main power lines, which continues. Short-term outages are much less concern than an extended one due to some larger disaster and would be better served by our own isolated individual backup systems. Or put a big diesel generator here, which is not allowed supposedly. And I don't believe it would cost $4 million. As a year-round resident whose family has owned property and lived here for 150 years, I oppose this project on several levels. It is not environmentally correct, especially in the proposed wooded residential location in the hamlet. In case of any failure and fire that would threaten our community and residents, our small fire department, you've heard it's 5 people, we can hardly put out a house fire. Our small fire department, and that's not a slight on our men, everybody's dedicated, but it's not easy. Our fire department and ambulance service should not have to wooded residential location in the hamlet. In case of any failure and fire that would threaten our community and residents, our small fire department, you've heard it's 5 people, we can hardly put out a house fire. Our small fire department, and that's not a slight on our men, everybody's dedicated, but it's not easy. Our fire department and ambulance service should not have to deal with protection of lives and environment involved from this type of project. This is thrust on us. I do not believe the project is all responsibly cost-effective for the consumer, and a huge waste of capital that should be better directed or not even spent. All of the costs should be transparent with forthcoming information details, including if there are subsidies or grants involved. I've asked that question. Nobody answers. They do not answer. I suspect the cost will ultimately be borne by the consumers involved and reflected in rising rates. Information requests have been made before this meeting with confusing and likely inaccurate results. And I'd like to restate that, the cost. Is there subsidies? Is there grants? And how in heck, if you can't buy and sell power, are you going to make any money? You're going to be on our backs. $50 million doesn't come out of the air. And if you're buying and selling power, this is not about backup. This is supposedly a profit thing and an experiment, and it should not be here. Thank you.